our goal is the UFC, so we want a win, and I won't take anything less. When I win this fight, being 5-2, a finish would look impressive, and I would be on track to getting to where I need to be. And of course, I do not overlook anyone.
From MMA Island. Christopher de Santiago of MMA Island, riding a four-fight win streak. We're talking to a top bantamweight prospect in Maya Stewart ahead of her next fight at Fury FC 109 next month. Maya, how's it going today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. We're a month out or less than a month out from your fight. I guess how did everything come together? Are you satisfied with this next matchup?
Yeah, I'm satisfied with the next matchup. I think it's perfect. She has a lot of experience, and I think it'll show a lot to anyone who's looking from the UFC that I'm willing to fight someone with that much experience. So I like the matchup.
For sure. Speaking of the women's bantamweight division, I guess on the regional scene, how hard has it been for you to find a fight in recent months? And I guess how has that been for you?
So with the women's bantamweight and any weight class that's, heavier than bantamweight, you're always going to have the challenge of finding opponents because there are just less of us. Um, but I've actually it hasn't been too bad. Recently, I thank my management for being very diligent in helping me to find opponents and keeping me active. So it hasn't been as bad as it used to be.
Aren't you rep by LCA or something like that, right?
Yep, LCA Sports Management, and also my coaches also contribute to helping me find matchups as well. So I have two parties helping me.
That's awesome, Maya. And you started your career at 0-2, now you're on the four-fight win streak. I mean, I'm sure you're very happy with that, but I guess what kind of changed for you? Is it your mindset or approach to fighting? What changed from going to that two-fight skid to a four-fight win streak?
Yeah, there were so many changes that needed to happen, and a lot of people don't talk about this. They don't talk about the transition from amateur to pro. That the level of competition will be different, the way that you have to train has to be different. There are just so many differences. And in my case, I moved around a lot. I also served in the army, so I'd been to multiple gyms, and I hadn't really been at one gym for a long time until I went to Kaizen MMA here in the Fairfax area. And when I settled down at this gym, I was 3-0 as an amateur, and I did a few more amateur fights and improved to 5-1. And then it was time for me to go pro. But the way that I was training as an amateur, it wasn't the frequency needed to increase as I transitioned to the professional level. Of course, there's the issue with having to balance work and training and so on, and sometimes you have to make, sacrifices. So I had to make a lot of sacrifices to be able to change my schedule so I could get 2 sessions a day. I also There's so many things. I changed the way that I scheduled my workouts, my lifting. I reached out to my coaches for extra help. I focused more on my deficiencies, and I listened more to the advice that my coaches had for me. I'm a pretty stubborn person. So when I, set my mind to something, I stick with it until something big happens. I'm like, okay, maybe I should listen to what, my coaches have to say to me. And they also helped me with my transition to the bantamweight division because I wasn't too keen on cutting a lot of weight. So all of those things lent to the changes that I made to help me um, get this winning streak going. Then
Hmm.
becoming a UFC champion, that was always my goal. When I learned that the UFC existed, first of all, I didn't know the UFC existed until I was 16 years old. So I wish I knew, but I'd always had the drive to want to compete in some type of combat sport, right? And the moment I learned that the UFC existed, I said, I want to be UFC champion. Women weren't even in the UFC at the time. That opportunity wasn't even there, but I knew I wanted to be a champion, and that's still the same goal today. It's not for money. If you're doing MMA for money, you you don't think too well because it's not the place for money. But I think most of us that do it, we do it for a legacy and we just want to be known as the greatest fighter in the world, and that's why I do it.
Interesting. And so I was gonna assume that like maybe your inspirations were Ronda Rousey or Miesha Tate, but you started watching MMA before that they started fighting. So I guess who were your inspirations and some of the first fighters that you watched on the TV?
So the very first MMA fight I ever saw, period, was a Bulldog fight. And I was in a store or somewhere, I don't remember, but I was looking on the TV and it was Tara LaRosa and Shayna Baszler. And when I saw it, they were actually in the middle of like grappling on the ground, and I didn't know anything about grappling at the time. So I was just like, oh, that's boring. So I didn't pay much attention to it, but I learned what the name MMA was, mixed martial arts. So that's how I was first exposed to it. And then later on, when I was 16, I was just surfing around on YouTube and the related videos pop up and I see Anderson Silva. I'm like, let me click on this. And I see his highlights and all those things. I'm like, wow, what is this? And that's when I said I want to be a UFC fighter. And then I just went into the rabbit hole of like Gina Carano, because I wanted to see what the women fighters look like. And that's when I saw like Cyborg, and there's a Dutch fighter that was famous, and then the Japanese fighter with the heel hook. I watched all those old fights, and then I've been following it ever since then.
Awesome. And I did want to get into your fight against Alivia Bierley. I mean, she was a top prospect that nobody wanted to fight, and you said yes to her, and you got your hand raised against her. I guess what did it mean for you to get your hand raised in that fashion? And did you feel like you were counted out?
Of course, I was counted out by so many. I mean, it makes sense. I had losses on my record. I think I had a losing record. I was 1-2, and she was, I believe it was like 6-0 as an amateur. So it makes sense. People will count you out. Um, but I knew the changes that I made in my training, and I knew that I had the element of surprise that they probably wouldn't have the expectation that I would come out with the skill set that I would. Um, and I think that fight kind of changed the course of my career, and it really gave me confidence just coming out with the victory in that fight.
And I guess why did you feel so underestimated? Was it because of your record, or was it something else that they might have seen? Or I guess why did you feel so underestimated?
I honestly, I think it's just like the record, my record, and people usually don't tune in and look at your fights. They usually just look at what's on paper. They pull up your Tapology and see, oh, is she finishing her fights, blah 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 blah. And they probably saw the two losses and said, oh, this will be an easy fight. And then of course Olivia had a lot of hype behind her, of course. So that didn't help as well.
Awesome. Next fight, Katharina Lehner. She has a few fights on the record. Pure FC 109. I guess what do you make of your next opponent?
I think I have a lot of thoughts on this. But I think it's going to be a fun fight. I have a lot of things I want to show the audience, and that's all I'm going to say about that for right now.
Hmm I don't know if you like. I'm sure you're not overlooking her or anything, but have you thought about the implications of a win, 5 fight win streak? Have you thought about the implications of a win here?
Of course, our goal, like our goal is the UFC, so we want a win, and I won't take anything less than a win. And I'm confident in my skill set, and I think if when I win this fight, being 5-2, a finish would look impressive and I would be on track to getting to where I need to be. And of course, I do not overlook anyone. As you can see in my last fight versus Kayla, you know, she came in, she was 1-2. I'm sure a lot of people were probably counting her out, but I knew watching her film that she was going to be the toughest fight. I even said in my one of my interviews, I said, I know Kayla Yontef is going to be the toughest fight in my career. And that's what it turned out to be. So you can't count anyone out. Going 3 rounds in general, I cannot stand long fights. I want to always get in and get out. You know, that's my philosophy, like get in, finish and get out. But you can't do that with every opponent. Every like some opponents are tough, some might give up easier, sometimes it's just whatever happens, you know? And that really woke me up. Um, and I realized that sometimes things won't always go the way that you want it to go. I knew she would be tough, but she was a lot tougher than than I expected. And you have to make quick decisions in the fight. I had a game plan going into the fight, and I said, yeah, if I do everything according to the game plan, you know, I'll get the finish, blah 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 blah. And sometimes you get in there and things are just not the way that you expect them to go. So um, I had to make the decision in the third round. I said, okay, I want this to look pretty, but this isn't going to be pretty at all. I'm just going to keep throwing. I'm going to keep punching, and I'm not going to stop. And, you know, that's definitely not part of the game plan. You know, you want to make great decisions and you want to look pretty, but that's not how it ended. And I had to make that decision in the third round to just let go and just let my hands go and get the TKO.
Mhm. Next month, going for your 5-fight win streak. I guess what can the fans expect to see from you, Maya, next month?
Uh, I think um hmm, I think there will be a lot of focus on my performance. You know, as an MMA fighter, we're athletes, but we're also entertainers. So I want to entertain the audience, and I hope they get that in the next fight.